Morning, Volker. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, Michael. How are you?
Yeah, very good. We're looking forward to our conversation hub today on coaching the C-suite, why it's a game changer for business success. So I wonder whether you wanted to kick off or whether we wanted to move to the slide first.
See, we just said it, right? I think with the kickoff, we should probably move to the next slide or the last slide, actually.
There you go.
Um, I think we can kick it off with the football field, which is always a good place. So you put the nice question there. Where are you playing? Where are you on the field, Michael?
Yeah, it's a good. I must give credit to Tanya Lee, who is the colleague who first introduced me to this idea. And I think it's interesting. Most of the time with clients, I'm either playing on the field or I'm actually not even in this picture. I'm in the boardroom or the committee room trying to gain and win clients in their premises, in their environment. So that's where I genuinely see myself a lot of the time.
Do you not see yourself on the sideline?
Well, this is the inevitable quandary. I see myself all over the place, and I suppose this is where we're going to get to with coaching. Sometimes I'm managing. I'm in the manager or the technical dugout, looking at the pitch. And sometimes I'm on the pitch playing. Sometimes I'm captaining on the pitch. And sometimes I'm actually in the audience, in the crowd, watching the spectators, just enjoying. And then other times I'm not with the crowd. I'm at the FA, or I'm at the sponsors, or I'm at other interested parties. Maybe an England meeting or whatever. Trying to sort of argue and advocate for my company and what we want to see happen in the industry. And it's a very wide-ranging analogy, this, which is why I like it so much and why it works so well for the coaching of C-suite people, members. And recently, within the last 12 months, I had a CEO who saw himself as being never on the pitch. And it was a really interesting moment for him to then, when we tied that with the coaching, where people suddenly said, well, sometimes we want you playing with us. Sometimes we want you playing a role. Sometimes we need your leadership to be with us in the trenches on the field. And I think it's a great analogy. What about you?
Yeah, I love the analogy. I mean, again, depending which hat I'm wearing, I can be on the field, I can be in the middle of it, or I can be on the sidelines. Do you know, actually? So a bit of a tangent here, but I think it's in the NFL. They have a coach puller. I think they call him. I don't know what the official name is, but they have someone who runs behind the coach to pull the coach back to not run onto the football field, which is quite funny. And they're earning about $40,000 a year just to pull people back during a game. And I thought it was fantastic. I must have seen it on TikTok or something.
The personal touchline bouncer.
Yeah, something like that, right? And sometimes I feel like that, not only pulling the coach back, but also pushing, as you said, right? Sometimes the leader might be standing on the side of the football field, right? They're not involved in the day-to-day business. They're too detached. Sometimes I feel like I should be the pusher instead of the puller, right? Pushing the CEO onto the field. And, if I say mingle with the team, and, I mean, I do a lot of work in emotional intelligence, right? Being empathetic, talking to people. I mean, I worked for a company where we literally had to do that with our CEO as well, where we said you have to talk to the common people on the shop floor. I mean, this is part of the job. You can't be just being detached, just thinking to think, oh, I know what they're thinking, I know how they feel, because you don't. You're not on the field.
You mentioned a very interesting point about detachment.
Yeah.
And there are times when You need to be not detached. You need to be physically in the actual place of play. You need to be actually physically doing a role. And I think that is something that we spend a lot of time with C-suite talking when we're coaching, saying, okay, when are you needed as a player? And when are you needed as a leader on the field? And can you distinguish between when you're trying to play all the parts on the field? So you're all 11 players. You can't be that. It's impossible. You are a team. And again, this is where the analogy, I think, really comes in well. Are you coaching the team? Are you playing as part of the team? Are you actually the player with the ball at this time? Are you someone who's off the field and actually there's no game on, but you're still having to work in interest groups or in sort of organizational groups or pressure bodies or whatever it is, or working with other clients or working with other users of your products and services? And that whole helping people to understand where they are at any one time, and that the role of the C-suite is multiplicitous. It's to play many roles at any particular moment in the day. You're not one person.
Yeah, and it's also, as you were just speaking, I was thinking, I saw the field a little bit more of, say, it's called the shop floor, but this could also be just the C-suite, because if you're talking about 11 players, right, it could just be the C-suite and the leadership team.
Yes.
So you could look at different layers. I begin to really like this analogy for the football field. So yeah, thanks to Tanya to come up with that idea, because it is a nice analogy. It's a goal setting, right?
Yes. What goal setting? What's your defense? What is your plan of attack? What is what is your strategy? How is that changing for each particular team that you play or each particular moment in time? It's a fascinating thing that Tanya does is she sits in front of a C-suite group and she literally does this exercise of, where are you on the field?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that we learn as we coach. The simplest of ideas, when listened to, reveal the most wonderful information.
Yeah, that's very true. You ever feel like the referee?
Well, I think that's that. What about you? Do you feel like the referee?
So sometimes you're in the middle of the field and you don't feel like a player. You just feel like the person that has to tell them all off. Which isn't the coach's job, right? The coach shouldn't tell off. The coach should help them to reflect. But sometimes you're very much a referee. You go like, red card. Sorry, you can't do that. This is not going to work.
I think that referee analogy is aligned for me to the facilitator role. And if you think about refereeing in most games, it's about the facilitation of fair play and the rules, and ensuring that everybody plays to the rules and understands the rules. And I think you're absolutely right. I would replace the word referee with facilitator for us when coaching the C-suite. But it's not really a but. And in addition to that, it's, does everybody understand the rules? Does everybody understand the values of this business? Yeah. When we talk about, and when you have new members of the team, and when you have a reorganization of the team, and we worked with a company late last year on their values and how they were expressing those values. And it was really interesting to start to understand. You talked about emotional intelligence. We also, as you know, do a lot with the Game Changer Index, GC Index. and getting people to understand that whole understanding of, well, what does the value mean to different people? How do they express that value? And that you really often need a facilitator to help make those conversations run smoothly. So again, another example where this analogy really lands well. And if we're in the States, we tend not to use football, as you mentioned earlier. We tend to use, well, American football or baseball or another analogy. Or if we're out in the Asia Pacific area, we'll often look at cricket, or we'll look at some other, or rugby is very popular as well. And we used to use rugby a lot when we were talking about agile, because there's a method there called Scrum, which draws itself from rugby. But yeah, so what are the sort of things that you come before a C-suite engage in you becoming their facilitator, their coach? What sort of resistances do you hear people suggesting to you?
What in terms of whether they want to be coached or not?
Well, yes, whether they want to be coached, whether they see it valuable, whether they see it adding to their end goals, whether they see it. What are the sort of naysayers' arguments? Don't do it because of this. Don't do it because of that.
I think often, a lot of C-suite, if I say, and it's always difficult to generalize, right? But people feel like, oh, I don't want to be taught anything, right? I don't need someone who tells me what to do, right? Yes. These are things the first objection you get as a coach. And then you remind them very, very kindly that you're not a mentor, right? Whilst you can be a mentor at some point, right? And I think we discussed that at some point. I think Tanya and I did a session, right, on coaching and mentoring and therapy. You're there to help them reflect, right? You're there to help them do their job, to be a bit of guidance without telling them what to do, giving them space. Sometimes, and I'm always drawing analogies, and I'm having this ongoing discussion with people in the space at the moment. So as a therapist, if I say all you do in quotation mark is you're creating space to listen to someone, right? To ask these probing questions, to go, what actually happened in your childhood, right? Because most therapeutic issues stem from childhood. And as a coach, it's forward-looking, right? And when you're a therapist and a coach, you sometimes feel like, and I have a few of those clients, it's all person-centered. You're going in and you see, what does this person actually need? And sometimes it is to go back into the past and go, let's figure out what we need to solve, what you might need to unlearn. And then where do you want to go, right? Where's to use the analogy, right? Where is the goalpost? And how do you get there? How do you get from your half into the other half and actually score that goal, right? There's a clear analogy. But it's not us doing it. As a coach, we're not there and go like, oh, you have to go over to the left, you have to go over to the right. We go like, so you're in the field. Now imagine, what would happen if you went to the left? What happened if you went to the right? Where do you see yourself, playing your best game? Where do you have the biggest chances of actually scoring your goal, meeting your KPIs, achieving what you set out to be? That's the role of the coach. And that's where, if you look at the football analogy again, right? If the coach is the one sitting at the sideline coaching the team, that coach tells the team what to do.
Yes.
Right. But off the game, they're properly coaching. They're asking them, how do you get there? Right. They're more removed. At least what I know of football training. I'm not a football trainer by all means.
Yeah. What you're saying is really interesting for me also, because one of the things that I get resistance to, people say to me, well, we've done very well to get here. Why do you think we need coaching and so the answer I often want to discuss is, do you think what got you here will get you where you want to be? And there's that big part of fear. So facing into what I call facing into the wind, and really saying, okay, we might not have the right process. What you can't do is say to them, you're not capable of growing the business. Growth is critical. And what coaching, I think, does is identify new potentials, or identify areas of potential that have not been exploited, and allows the C-suite and particularly CEOs to then take the team, take the leadership team. Well, actually, it doesn't always have to be the C-suite. It could be a divisional leadership team, but to take that leadership team and say, okay, what are the potentials that we're not accessing? What are the needs? Again, I go back to the GC index, which helps us, and I know the emotional intelligence helps with your work. But what are the potentials that we're not unlocking? What is the kinetic energy we are not releasing into this growth, into this business? And I feel very much that I think while you can, I like the mentoring coaching thing, while you can, of course, mentor people and help them understand how they attain the skill, I think it's also encouraging people to explore their own potential and say, okay, well, how do you want to do this? What is it that you think you've not applied here that you have? How would you do that? Why have you always done? The another questions that we always get are, great mentors are people who have answers for your questions. Great coaches are people who have questions for your business. And I think that's another great phrase that Tanya often uses in front of me. Is she said, okay, mentors can provide you with great answers to your questions, but coaches are here to ask you great questions around your business and what is it that you want to have answered. And I think for a C-suite, it's often having that time where you referred to reflect that really matters.
Yeah. It's always subjective, right? It depends on the coachee and what challenges they have. And sometimes, yes, you have to go in and say, tell them, how to be more productive, how to structure the day, and you have, what I would call a little bit of a basic work with them. And I'm often, I don't want to say shocked maybe is a strong word, but with a lot of executives I go in and say, so what are your values? And a lot of them can't answer that. And you go back to the basics and you go like, okay, let's start there. Let's start at your values and let's build from there and see where we go. And sometimes it's quite a lengthy process. And as you say, and I'm sure there's a book with that title as well, right? What got you here won't get you there. We as humans, we learn certain things, we do certain things, we move forward, we do a job, and then we get to a certain, call it a glass ceiling, right? Get to a point where we go like, we're a bit stuck, right? And that's where coaching comes in, because coaching, majority of it is get you unstuck with whichever means, we need to apply. And self-awareness, as you mentioned, right, which is part of emotional intelligence, is such an important thing, right? And some leaders just don't have any self-awareness. They just go out, but they know where they're going. Usually they know where they're going, right? They have the big vision. They know they want to win the Premier League or whichever league, right? And they're driven, right? But then you need to rein them back a bit, because, there are other players on the field, right? There are other things, they need to consider. And showing them those blind spots, right? Showing, pointing out blind spots and saying, look at the defender over there. How well is that defender playing? What are your thoughts on that? And then go, zooming out. Because what leaders, at least in my opinion, are not really good at is, as you said, right, is taking time out to think. And it's a great leader I spoke to not too long ago, and she scheduled thinking time into her diary.
Yes.
And I absolutely loved that. Because she says, this is undisturbed time. This is my time block on a, I don't know, Thursday morning, 10 o'clock. This is when, no emails, nothing else on my desk. I just think, I might take a nap. I might go for a walk, whatever I want to do. But it's my time to just kind of reflect on things. And with coaching, it's almost like an enforced thinking time. It's an enforced reflection time. To look at things. And as you know, right, the best coaching sessions are the one where the coachee comes in and goes like, Volker or Michael, this is what I want to think about today. Let's start there. And then from there, you just blow it up because, you just see so many other things and go down rabbit holes and bring it all together. And yeah, so those are my favorite sessions anyway.
Yes, my favorite session, I suppose, is always where actually the session closes and you've had a discussion and you've had some ideation and so forth, and actually in 2 or 3 days, you send an update to your coaching plan, and the person comes back to you and says, look, irrespective of that was a great session because it allowed me to explore this and that.
Yeah.
And I think that coaching that really refers into what you've just said, the ability of coaching to ask good questions of the answers you think you have, the antithesis of the mentorship, which is good answers for the questions that you have.
Yeah.
I think that putting people in a position where they are taking what you referred to as the time, the quiet time, to really question themselves and giving them techniques, appropriate ways in which they can discover how to productively self-question what's happening. And that the famous sort of Stephen Covey thing, I think, plays into coaching the senior leadership team, and that is seek to understand before being understood.
Yeah.
And that for me is quite often what people lack. You've said to them, tell me, what is it that you understand about this situation? What is it that you've sought to understand about this situation? And that's often the most valuable reflective moment for me in terms of coaching a senior team, is giving them the chance to say, actually, I don't think I do understand. Actually, I think I need to learn. Actually, I don't know everything. Actually, I can't predict where the business is going to go from here. And giving them, there's a lovely phrase that another coach friend of mine says, giving people permission.
Yeah.
I think is something in most C-suite players that they don't, she'll come to you and say, well, I don't have time to do it. Well, no, you have permission to work on your own capability and your own position. It's not there's not a requirement for you to instantly answer everything. And those are some of the greatest sessions you have, when you really get people understanding that they have permission just to think, just to question, just to seek to understand before they themselves need to be understood, I think, as Stephen Covey would have said.
It's such a powerful thing that you just said, or your coaching friend said, right? Giving someone the permission. Even, if you think about even yourself, right? Sometimes we have to give ourselves the permission to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we feel we're in this hamster wheel. We have to keep going and going and going. And if no one steps in, we're just going to keep on going. Right? I mean, I see it with myself, right? If I personally, I'm one of these, good or bad people, I don't know, but I block out lunch every day, right? Because if I don't, I wouldn't have lunch. I would just keep going and going and going. And we need to give ourselves the permission, to take breaks. I just read an article this morning about how important it is to take breaks and, to get your energy back. So for me, don't necessarily need to talk about me, but I started at the beginning of the year. I'm blocking out 90 minutes over lunch now because I'm getting up really early. I'm at my desk early, so I need to nap at lunchtime. When COVID hit, I'm like, this is great. Not COVID was great, but for me, it was like I can have a nap every day, not only when I work from home. And now that we work in a hybrid or remote, so I have a nap. I have my lunch, and that takes up about an hour. And then I still have half an hour where I go like, I can get on top of my emails before the afternoon rush. Or it's nice weather, I might take the dog for a walk, or I can just sit there in the sun if it's, sun is just coming out, and just enjoy some downtime and have a cup of coffee and just think. I give myself the permission to have a 90-minute break in the middle of the day. And a lot of people don't give themselves permission to have lunch at all, right? At their desk, we constantly need to push harder and harder and harder. And that's not going to work.
No. The permission to not know, the permission to not be the omniscient and omnipresent oracle, if you like, and to admit that you are still learning, and to face down the initial instance of fear that you don't know the answer, I think is a wonderful gift that coaching can give a senior team. And I would, for my money, when asked about the resistance, I feel often it is a resistance that we don't want to let people, we don't want to tell people. It's a bit like a Wizard of Oz. It's almost like behind the curtains, this great big, we're running the business, but really, we're juggling a lot of things here you don't understand. Well, actually, they're juggling a lot of concerns and a lot of unspoken fears. I think that often comes up. I think the other thing is, do we need to be on the pitch? Surely that's not our job to be on the pitch. Well, actually, my experience of talking to second and third level senior people below the exco is quite often they'll say they're just not playing the game. They're just not in the game. They're not. Where's their pound of flesh? What are they giving to this problem of growth that we have? And I think, that's often something that comes out that they don't want to start that initially. Also, the other resistance will be, we're going to do that in 12 months.
Yeah.
So,
I do something now.
It's almost bizarre. It's almost like, we can put off challenging ourselves because we're going to be fine. And you're like going, no, we're not here to make fine work. We're here to help you discover and apply the potential and the passions that you have to make it more than fine, to make it excellent. And there's, of course we would say this being coaches, but I sometimes find that, I had a case where someone was flying the Atlantic. I mean, every month, business class. So every month they're spending, £6,000 on tickets. And so they're spending £72,000 a year just on airlines, and probably more. Probably it was $100,000 a year. And their concern was, do we have £100,000 to invest in the development of the exec? I'm like, do you have £100,000 you can afford not to develop the exec? And we always come back, for me, as we come to the end of this session, it comes down to, the classic, the CFO says, well, what happens if we coach and we develop our exco, our C-suite, and they all leave. And the CEO goes, well, what happens if we don't spend any money and we don't develop our exco and they all stay?
Yeah. But you're bang on there, and of course we would say that. But maybe to close it off, I know we had time. We talk about uncertainty at the moment, right, in the market, and a lot of companies are struggling to see, direction, where next, what could we do? How could we change? How can we get the innovation, going? How do we talk differently to our customers? There's so much change going on. And in my opinion, now is the time to invest in coaching, because you need to, because if you invest now, you will get this competitive edge. So when we get out of this uncertainty, you'll be flying. Once others, to your point, wait 12 months, or now everything is better, now we can invest. You miss the boat, quite frankly. But that's my humble opinion, and of course I'm biased there. That's all we have to do for, isn't it?
Well, we're both biased. We've got to the end. Volker, thank you very much indeed for joining us again on this Conversation Hub about coaching in the C-suite.
Yeah.
And we look forward to hearing comments and questions to come back to us. And please find the recording and watch it on our hub, the YouTube at CultureWorks Consortium, and you'll be able to look us up and pose us more questions.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
All right, bye-bye.